A beggar stood in the train station, his hand empty for years. But when a stranger refused him money, he spoke 7 words that would not only fill the beggar's pockets, but would completely rebuild his life. Have you ever felt invisible? I don't mean just overlooked in a crowd. I mean the kind of invisible where the world looks right through you, as if you're made of glass, where your voice is just a whisper lost in the wind, and your presence is little more than a shadow on the wall. This was the world of a man named Leo. Every day was the same for Leo. The world moved in a blur of color and noise around him, but he was stuck a still point in a turning universe. His universe was a great, echoing hall of the city's central bus terminal. They call it Grand Central Terminal, a place of beginnings and endings, of joyful hellos and tearful goodbyes. But for Leo, it was just home, a hard, cold home of polished floors and endless benches. He was a beggar. That's what he called himself. That's what he believed himself to be. His days started with the first screech of bus brakes at dawn. He'd find his spot, a patch of wall near the newsstand, out of the main flow of traffic, but visible enough. And then he would begin, his voice with a low, practiced murmur. "Spare some change? Anything helps, sir. A little help, ma'am." His hand, cupped and held out, was his only tool. It was an empty hand, and most people treated it as if it were empty of everything. Empty of hope, empty of potential, empty of a soul. They would sidestep him, their eyes fixed on some distant point ahead. Some would drop a coin without breaking stride. Their gesture one of habit, not a connection. Their charity was a transaction that required no eye contact. It was a way of saying, "Here, now please stay in your world, and I will stay in mine." And after years of this, Leo had started to believe it, too. He saw himself as they saw him, a man with nothing to offer, a man who only takes. But one afternoon, everything changed. It was a Tuesday, I think. The terminal was its usual hectic self. Leo was making his rounds, his spirit as weary as his body. And then he saw him. A man stepped through the large glass doors, and he carried an aura of calm with him. He wasn't rushed. He moved with quiet confidence, his well-tailored suit a stark contrast to the wrinkled, worn-out clothes of the travelers. This was a man who knew where he was going. This was Mr. Evans. A spark, a tiny flicker of the old hope, ignited in Leo's chest. This man, he thought, he has so much. He'll understand. He'll see me. He'll give me something real. Summoning what little courage he had left, Leo approached him. He held out his hand, the empty hand, and spoke his usual line. "Sir, could you spare a little help for a hungry man?" Mr. Evans stopped. He didn't look annoyed. He didn't look away. He looked directly at Leo, his gaze thoughtful, penetrating. It was a look that saw more than just dirty clothes and a pleading face. It was a look that saw right into the heart of the matter. Instead of reaching for his wallet, he asked a question that, to Leo, sounded like it was in a foreign language. "Do you always just take from others?" Mr. Evans asked, his voice calm but firm. "Have you ever given anything to anyone?" The noise of the terminal seemed to fade away. Leo stood there, his hand still hanging in the air, stunned. He had been prepared for a no, even for being ignored, but he was not prepared for this. I'm sorry, sir." Leo stammered, lowering his hand. "It's a simple question," Mr. Evans said, a faint, not unkind smile on his lips. "You are asking me to give you something of value, but what do you offer in return?" Leo's mind raced. This was a trick. It had to be. "Sir, I'm just a beggar. I survive by asking for help. I have nothing to give to anyone." He said it with a certainty that came from years of believing it. "That's the problem," Mr. Evans replied. "If you believe you have nothing to give, then you also have no right to ask for anything. You see, I am a businessman. I believe in exchange, a fair trade. If you can offer me something, anything of value, then I can give you something in return. But if you have nothing to give, I'm sorry, but I cannot give you anything either." He wasn't being cruel. His words weren't sharp or angry. They were logical. They were the truth. And the truth, when you hear it for the first time after a long lie, can feel like a physical blow. Just then, a voice over the loudspeaker announced the departure of a bus. Mr. Evans gave a slight nod. "Think about it," he said, and then he turned and walked towards his gate, leaving Leo standing alone in the middle of the rushing crowd. Leo didn't move for a long time. The words echoed in his mind, drowning out the announcements, the chatter, the roar of engines. If you have nothing to give, you have no right to ask. For the first time, he saw his empty hand for what it was. It wasn't just empty of coins. It was empty of value. It was empty of purpose. All these years, he had been holding out an empty hand, wondering why people were so reluctant to fill it. But Mr. Evans was right. Why should they? That night, curled up on his usual bench long after the last bus had departed, Leo couldn't sleep. The terminal was silent and dark, but his mind was louder than it had ever been. But what can I give? He argued with the voice in his head. I am just a beggar. I have nothing. Yet, the businessman's words were a seed, planted deep in the barren soil of his spirit. If you want to receive, you must first give. He stared into the darkness, his empty hand clenched into a fist. For the first time in years, he was not just waiting for the dawn. He was waiting for an answer. For the next 2 days, Leo did not beg. He simply existed. He sat on his bench, not as a beggar waiting for alms, but as a man lost in the storm of his own thoughts. The world continued its frantic dance around him, but now he was watching it, really watching. He saw a young woman struggling with a heavy suitcase, her face pinched with stress. He saw a businessman drop a folder, papers scattering everywhere, and a teenager stop to help him gather them without being asked. He saw a mother trying to calm a crying baby, her own eyes tired, and an older woman offer her a warm, understanding smile. He was beginning to see the invisible threads that connected people. Small acts of help, glances of understanding, a moment of patience. These were all tiny, silent exchanges. A little bit of value given, creating a little bit of value received. But what did he have? He was still a man with empty pockets. On the third morning, the sun streamed to the high windows of the terminal, painting long, golden stripes on the floor. Restless, Leo walked away from his usual spot, towards the far end of the building where the buses for long-distance journeys idled. The air was thick with diesel fumes. He leaned against a cold metal fence, feeling the familiar weight of hopelessness starting to press down on him again. Maybe Mr. Evans was wrong. Maybe some people just have nothing to give. He looked down, kicking at a loose piece of gravel, and that's when he saw them. Pushing up through a crack in the concrete, right next to the fence post, was a small cluster of flowers. They were wild, a little dusty from the bus exhaust, but they were undeniably beautiful. Their petals were vibrant, defiant yellow, like little suns growing in the most unlikely of places. They had fought through the hard, unyielding concrete just to exist, just to offer their beauty to anyone who cared to look. Leo stared at them, and in that moment, the seed that Mr. Evans had planted burst into life. An idea, fragile and beautiful as the flowers themselves, bloomed in his mind. What if, he thought, his heart beginning to beat a little faster? What if instead of just taking, I offer something in return? What if I give people a flower? It was so simple, it seemed almost foolish. But the more he thought about it, the more it felt right. He wasn't selling the flower. He wasn't trading it for a specific price. He was offering it as a gesture of thanks, a gesture of exchange, with a new sense of purpose, a feeling he hadn't felt in a decade. Leo gently bent down and carefully plucked a small handful of the yellow blossoms. Their stems were thin but strong. He held them in his hand, and for the first time, his hand was not empty. He walked back to the spot near the newsstand, his palms sweating. This was different. This was terrifying. Begging was passive. You just waited. This was active. This required courage. He saw a kind-looking elderly man approaching. Leo's old instinct was to mutter a plea and hold out his empty hand, but he fought it. Instead, he stepped forward slightly, holding up one of the bright yellow flowers. "Sir," Leo said, his voice shaky but clear, would you like a flower? A little beauty for your day." The man stopped, surprised. He looked at Leo, then at the flower. A slow smile spread across his face. It wasn't the pitying smile Leo was used to. It was a smile of genuine delight. "Well, isn't that nice?" the man said. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a $2 coin, and placed it in Leo's other hand. Then he took the flower, carefully, as if it were something precious. "Thank you, son. You have a good day now." He walked away, smelling the flower. Leo stood frozen, looking at the coin in his hand. It was more than he usually got from a single person. But the coin wasn't the point. The point was the thank you. The point was the smile. The point was that for a brief moment, two human beings had connected in a simple, honest exchange. He had given something, and he had received something far greater than money. He had received dignity. He tried it again, and again. The results were the same. People were startled at first, then pleased. They accepted the flower with a smile, a laugh, a word of thanks. Their coins and bills were given more freely, more generously. He was no longer a problem to be avoided. He was a person offering a small gift. And then he noticed something fascinating. He ran out of flowers by mid-afternoon. For the rest of the day, he reverted to his old way, just holding out his hand. The donations dried up. The people who had smiled at him hours earlier now walked past without a glance. The lesson was as clear as the terminal's announcement system. It's true, Leo thought, a wave of understanding washing over him. People like to receive something in return. It's not about greed. It's about balance. It's about respect. He made sure to have flowers every day after that. Then, one afternoon, he saw him. Mr. Evans was back, sitting on a bench, reading a newspaper while waiting for his bus. Leo's heart leaped. This was his chance. He walked over, his bouquet of yellow flowers held proudly in his fist. "Sir," he said, his voice strong and clear. Mr. Evans looked up from his paper. There was no immediate recognition in his eyes. "Today," Leo announced, beaming, "I have something to give you. If you give me money, I will give you flowers in return." A slow, deep smile spread across Mr. Evans's face. The recognition was there now, mixed with something else, admiration. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a $5 bill, and handed it to Leo. Then he took not one, but 3 flowers. "You see," Mr. Evans said, his eyes locking with Leo's, "you have truly understood the value of exchange. Today, you are no longer just a beggar." He paused, letting the words hang in the air. "You have become a businessman." The bus doors hissed open. Mr. Evans gave a final, approving nod, then boarded the bus and was gone. Leo stood there, watching the bus pull away. The words echoed in his mind, louder than any engine. "You have become a businessman." He looked down at the flowers in his hand, then at the $5 bill. A thought, quiet but immense, began to form. Am I really a businessman now? The identity of Leo the beggar has been shattered. He has been given a new name, a businessman. The bus carrying Mr. Evans disappeared into the city traffic. But the words he left behind seemed to hang in the air around Leo, as solid and real as the benches and the pillars of the terminal. "You have become a businessman." For a long time, Leo didn't move. He stood there, a man transfixed by a thought. He was no longer holding a simple bouquet of flowers. He was holding evidence, proof of a concept, proof of a new life. For years, he had believed the story he told himself. "I am a beggar. I have nothing." It was a story that required no effort, a story that justified his emptiness. But now, a new story was being written, and it was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. This story required something of him. It required courage. "I am a businessman." He turned the phrase over in his mind. At first, it felt like a costume that was too big for him, a suit he was pretending to wear. But then he looked at the $5 bill in his hand. He looked at the remaining flowers. This was no longer charity. People weren't giving him money out of pity. They were paying for the flowers. They were customers. He was a vendor. The transaction was about more than flowers for money. It was about value for value. It was about dignity for respect. That night, as the terminal grew quiet, Leo made a decision. It was the most significant decision of his life. He would leave Grand Central Terminal. not as a beggar moving to a new corner, but as a businessman leaving his first informal office to start a real enterprise. The next morning, he did not take his usual spot by the newsstand. Instead, with the last of the money he had saved from his flower exchanges, he took a city bus to the wholesale flower market on the outskirts of the city. The sight was overwhelming, a riot of color and fragrance, a universe of beauty he never knew existed. He bought a simple bucket and a small assortment of fresh, vibrant flowers, daisies, carnations, a few roses. It was a modest inventory, but it was his. He found a small and used corner just outside the terminal's main entrance, a spot with good foot traffic. With a deep breath, he set down his bucket and arranged the flowers. His heart hammered against his ribs. This was different from picking wildflowers. This was official. This was real. The first day was hard. People were wary. They were used to ignoring him, or at best, dropping a coin in passing. Now, he was standing proudly, offering a product. Some people shook their heads and walked on, but others stopped. They admired the flowers. They asked the price. The exchange was clear, honest. He was no longer asking for a handout. He was inviting a transaction. Weeks turned into months. Leo, the beggar, was a fading memory. In his place was Leo, the flower seller. He learned which flowers people liked best. He learned to make small bouquets. He saved his earnings, not just for survival, but for investment. He bought a better cart. He opened a small stall at a weekend farmer's market. The man who once believed he had nothing to offer was now bringing beauty into the lives of dozens of people every single day. One crisp autumn morning, Leo found himself back at Grand Central Terminal. He was wearing clean, comfortable clothes, the uniform of a working man. He was there to meet a supplier, his mind buzzing with plans to supply flowers for a local hotel. As he walked through familiar halls, a wave of nostalgia washed over him, not with sadness, but a profound sense of gratitude. And then he saw him. Mr. Evans was sitting on the very same bench, glancing at his watch. Time, it seemed, had created a perfect circle. Leo walked over, a calm smile on his face. "Excuse me, sir. Your bus to Maple Creek doesn't depart for another 20 minutes. Mr. Evans looked up, a polite but slightly puzzled expression on his face. "Why, yes, that's right." "Thank you." He studied Leo for a moment. There was a flicker of something, a distant recognition, but he couldn't quite place it. "Do I know you?" Leo's smile widened. "Yes, we've met. Twice before. Right here on this very bench." Mr. Evans frowned, his eyes searching Leo's face. He saw the confidence, the clear gaze, the posture of a man who owned his place in the world. And then his eyes dropped to the small, fresh daisy pinned to Leo's jacket lapel. His own eyes widened in stunned disbelief. "Wait," he breathed, leaning forward. "You're the man, the one-eyed of flowers." Leo laughed, a warm, genuine sound. "Yes, that was me. But today, I am no longer that man. I run a small flower business now. I'm actually here to discuss supplying flowers for a hotel chain." Mr. Evans was utterly astonished. He stood up and extended his hand. Leo took it, and the handshake was firm, a greeting between equals. "That's incredible," Mr. Evans exclaimed. What changed? What was the turning point? The flower seller's smile softened, becoming reflective. "You taught me one of life's greatest truths," he said. "We only truly receive when we first learn to give. But you taught me something even more important that day. You gave me a new name. That day, I realized that I was never really a beggar. I was a businessman all along. I just had to have someone show me how to see myself that way." The two men talked for a few more minutes, sharing stories of their journeys. Then, the announcement for their respective buses echoed through the hall. They shook hands once more, a silent acknowledgement of the profound change that a single idea can create. As Leo boarded his bus, he looked out the window at the terminal, the place that had been his prison and then his launching pad. He thought about the wild yellow flowers that had started it all. The greatest gardens, he realized, don't grow in the ground first. They grow in the mind. Life is shaped by how we see ourselves. If you believe you're small, You will remain small. You will hold out an empty hand to the world and wonder why it remains empty. But if you can look within and recognize even the smallest seed of potential, if you can see yourself as strong, capable, and worthy of giving, then you can achieve greatness. Because when your thoughts change, when you truly change the story you tell yourself about who you are, your future has no choice but to change too. Of course. A strong closing hook reinforces a lesson, and a clear CTA call to action guides a viewer on what to do next. Here is a powerful combination you can use at the end of your video. So, I want to leave you with this one question. The same question that changed a beggar's life forever. What is the flower in your hand? What is that one thing, that talent, that idea, that small act of kindness you can offer the world today? Because remember, your greatness is not determined by your circumstances. It is determined by your thoughts. And when you change your thoughts, you change your world. If this story reminded you that you have something valuable to give, then do me a favor. Give this video a thumbs up. That's your first small exchange of value today. If you know someone who needs to hear this message, share it with them. And if you want to join us for more stories that inspire change, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. It costs you nothing, but it gives us everything we need to keep creating content for you. Thank you for watching.